University presidents are giving in, that these groups are negotiating with campus administrators. It seems as though the inmates are running the asylum, and how deep this runs and how out there anti-Semitic some of these people are.
So what I think this is, I'm going to make up a word because I don't think it's a word, the customerification of college. Where the college students are no longer students, they're customers, right? So that's why they bend over backwards to cater to them, and they give in to what their demands. The fact that they have demands to even be considered tells you how much of a customer that they feel that they are. They pay $80,000 to be here, so give us what we want. We need more of this, we need more of that. Give it to us.
Welcome to the Michele Tafoya podcast.
We have had Adam B. Coleman, president of Ain't Blackistan, on this show before. He is wise, smart, entertaining. You will love this conversation. We cover everything from Trump to Black Lives Matter to the anti-Israeli, the anti-Semitic protests that are going on college campuses, to God, to all kinds of topics. And it's all crammed into a nice little chunk of time that you're going to find terribly entertaining. So we're happy to bring it to you. And we're also really happy that today's episode is sponsored by XXXY Athletics. Jennifer Say, the former president of Levi's, is now the founder, owner, creator of XXXY Athletics. It's the only athletics brand standing up for the protection of women's sports. So this is more urgent than ever. We saw Title IX gutted. The elimination of women as a sex-based class. I mean, it's crazy what's going on. And Jennifer Say is the best person to represent this with her brand. She was a world-class gymnast. She exposed abuse in the sport before anyone else did. She suffered for it, but she was right and redeemed in the end. She stood up for open schools during COVID. She suffered for it, but again, who was right? She was. And XXXY Athletics is the culmination of everything she's ever done, standing up for kids. As I said, she led Levi's, a world-class clothing brand, and being unafraid to say true but unpopular things and taking the heat for it. That's what I call being courageous and doing good. So if you care about girls and women's sports, check out XXXY Athletics. You will love the quality and the style, and you'll be choosing a brand that aligns with your values. Here's what you need to do. Go to xx-xyathletics.com. That dash has to be in there. xx-xyathletics.com. Use this code, Michele75. That'll get you free shipping on orders of $75 or more. When I say the quality is high, I'm not even exaggerating a touch. This is great quality clothing. After all, she was the president of Levi's. She knows what she's doing. This is beautiful stuff. xx-xyathletics.com. Use the code Michele75 for free shipping on orders of $75 or more. Coming up next, the one and only Adam B. Coleman. Just a conversation you're going to love. Stay tuned. Adam, it is great to see you again. The second edition of your book. What prompted this?
Actually, someone had reached out to me who wanted to help me with the book. So obviously when I wrote the book, I was IT guy, first attempt writing a book, not really a writer in the first place. Although it came out pretty well considering those things. Yeah. But there were some errors, there was some clarification that needed to be done. And so they offered to help me edit the book. So much so that they didn't want anything for it. And someone I've gotten to know since then. So I thought it was a good idea to do it because I do want my book to be taken seriously in, education institutions, whether it be colleges or public schools, private schools, whatever. And having it a bit more cleaned up can only yield better results.
For people who didn't see our first interview, What drove you? 'Cause writing a book is not an easy undertaking. I mean, people do it with ghostwriters and so forth. You obviously write well. You've been, published in the New York Post, the Federalist, Newsweek, et cetera. So you do have the ability to write. But to sit down and write a book, why were you so passionate about that? What did you want to say?
So I think it was multiple things. I had an idea about writing a book a year prior to me sitting down writing it. Something about questioning things, because I was going through a personal transformation of my own, where I started questioning things that I thought were true and finding out that they weren't true, and the importance of it. But I didn't have any direction to go with it. And part of the reason I wanted to write something was because I wanted to leave something behind for my son. As a legacy item, something for him to be proud of his father with. And that was kind of like the seeds of it. But the combination of the lockdowns, being unable to question things, and then George Floyd happening, being unable to question the narrative. And, I wasn't a public person whatsoever. I barely used social media. I had a Facebook only for friends and family, and I barely touched that. So I kept everything to myself because it was my choice. But it's a lot different than when you feel like you're not allowed to say something. And that's what it felt like. You weren't allowed to say something. So it kind of pushed me into, one, finding out, like, am I the only one that feels this way? And then when I started going down the free speech forums and talking to people, I found out I wasn't the only person that felt this way, which is very comforting to find out you're not going crazy.
No,
So
we're all
then-
going crazy together. Is what
Yeah, we're all going crazy together. Exactly. And then I would say after that, actually, I got some encouragement from people when I started expressing myself in long form on these platforms. People would just reach out to me and say, you should write more often. And I was like, maybe this is like the sign, this is the push. And, if I'm completely honest, part of me felt like I was supposed to do this, like I was called to do this. And that's why I wasn't really scared. I was prepared. Maybe I'll lose my job because I didn't tell my job. Maybe my friends will abandon me. I was prepared for that. Maybe my family will be upset. I was prepared for that. And I was perfectly fine with whatever may come from it. And everything actually turned out way better than I ever expected. I thought I might sell 10 copies outside of, friends and family who just wanted to show support. And I've sold many more.
What about those things that you were braced for? Losing your job, losing your friends, being separated from your family. What happened there?
Well, none of it. Actually, the CEO of the company was like, I'll buy 5 copies, it turns out he was a big Trump supporter, so they were full support. My employer at the time was full support, shocked because they didn't know I was writing it. I didn't tell them. But they were full support to the day I left. And my friends, I had a few progressive friends that were on the newer side of my life. And I think one tried to hang on, so to speak, for a little bit, but I lost them. And I was fine with that. That's what it is. But as far as my family goes, not everybody can say that they're blessed to have a really decent family. But my family that I'm close to, my extended family, they all say like the same thing. We support you, or at the very most, they'll say, listen, man, I don't agree with everything you say, but I'm so proud of you. Like you're the celebrity. They're really happy for me.
Yeah.
And that, like, I don't need everybody to agree with me. I'm really happy that that they took something from it. Some of them read the book, some of them didn't. My mom, she's proud of me. She watches my interviews sometimes. So, it's been a real blessing because I didn't know how anybody would take what I had to say because I am so quiet and private.
It's sometimes the quietest and most reserved people who have the most wisdom to share or the most impactful things to say. And so when they say them, I heard this all the time about guys in locker rooms, right?
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't talk much. So when he does talk, we all listen. You know, he doesn't say
Right.
stuff just to say it. So when he does, we all pay attention, or she. And so I think that's probably what brings some of that added respect for what you're saying and doing.
I agree. I've heard that in my personal life as well. I'm the quiet guy in the corner who's just observing, and I listen. But when I say something, like, people stop and listen.
Yeah. Well, it's, oh, he's actually talking. Let's hear what he has to say, because we never hear this. So
Yeah.
my husband's that way too. I'm the talker in the family, so I spew too much. You hear a lot of people talking about saving democracy, saving, what we are founded on. Yeah, well, at the very heart of our democracy is free speech. And that, to me, seems to be the one thing that people are attacking these days. And we can't afford that, because in today's digital age, discussions about our wealth, our rights, and even our future are being silenced or overshadowed in mainstream narratives. And that leaves a lot of you feeling voiceless in conversations that are crucial to our financial independence and security. And this is where wealth protection research steps in, armed with a mission that's never been more critical. Wealth protection research is not a financial advisory firm. They're defenders of free speech. They're committed to giving a voice to the silenced. Wealth protection research tirelessly seeks out financial experts. These are the voices that challenge prevailing narratives, especially as we navigate the uncertainties of this upcoming 2024 election. Wealth protection research has created a 2024 election wealth protection report. This is a free report. It highlights the 3 best ideas for protecting and growing your money heading into the 2024 election. It contains ideas the mainstream media won't touch, and listeners can get it completely free. Here's how. Just text the word ideas to 76626 to claim your free copy. If you believe, like I do, in just the absolute sanctity of free speech and the importance of financial freedom, do this now. Text ideas to 76626, IDEAS. Claim your free copy of this 2024 election protection report. It's time to widen the scope of what we're told, to hear the ideas the establishment doesn't think you can handle, and to take control of our financial destinies. Text ideas, IDEAS, to 76626 to claim your free copy. Over the course of time, I'm just looking at your X page right now, at Wrong Speak, speaking wrong at the right time. It's so interesting that so many of us feel like, and what you've done is courageous. And that's why I love it so much. I'm all about doing good and being brave. And that's, you've checked both of those boxes many, many times over, but you have become this celeb. Now you're modeling for XXXY Athletics with Jennifer Say, her company. How did that come about?
In the most weird way, it was a joke. She put out a hint that she was doing something. Like, she basically said, should I start some sort of clothing line? And, I just lost a bunch of weight, and I was kind of joking around, and I was like, hey, if you need a model, let me know. And then, was it like a minute later, she sends me a DM and says, are you serious? I'm like, I'm serious if you're serious. And then 2 days later, she sends me a contract. So quite literally, it was because of Twitter. I just happened to see her tweet. But it was a really good opportunity. I had a lot of fun doing it. Went out to Nashville and actually sat down with Jennifer for breaking bread, along with Chloe Cole, who was also part of it. So a really good experience. And I'm really happy. I'm always happy to see people who create stuff. Like, it's really easy to complain. But it's another thing to go out and put your time and effort and money to create something. So, when she was like, do you want to be part of this? I'm like, hell yeah, let me be part of this, because you're trying to create something. You're trying to add something. And not only that, the number one thing I really appreciate about her brand, it's actually good stuff. Like,
yes.
My wife is always like, man, this is nice. You know,
Yeah.
it's quality products.
Absolutely. These are not just t-shirts made in China. They're actually made in Peru and printed. It's excellent quality. We're very happy to have her as the sponsor of today's show, by the way. But that's not why we're talking about this necessarily. I think it's a really interesting thing that Twitter/X, whatever you want to call it, has become this conduit. It's how I first met you. It's how I've booked the majority of my guests, and how we all interface and discover, as you did, that you're not alone in your frustrations or you're feeling crazy.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned Breaking Bread. This is your podcast. So this is another tentacle of your burgeoning empire. And what do you hope to accomplish with the podcast?
To inspire genuine conversations. Often we say conversations, but really it's an interview. Or it's just one person listening. Or we avoid conversations in the first place and we want debate. We need to debate this topic. When debate is about winning, it's not about listening. It's not about understanding, right? A conversation is. You change people's minds by not trying to change their mind, right? And a debate is trying to force an idea. And of course, you're going to be defensive and try to combat it. So with Breaking Bread, I just want to sit down with people I think are interesting and talk to them, and doing that over a meal. And the idea came from it being something that I was doing for a few years when I would travel abroad. One of my favorite things to do, especially bouncing around Europe, I would meet people. And actually, first thing I realized is so many people outside of America pay attention to American politics. And I don't think people within America understand that everybody is watching what we do. And usually they say, whatever America does, it's going to happen to us shortly after. So we're kind of like the beacon. If we start doing terrible stuff, like, we have Black Lives Matter in the US, the UK starts to import Black Lives Matter. Like, it doesn't even make sense in the same concept over there, but they import it nonetheless. So, but I was bouncing around Europe and I would meet these people from all over the place. I remember having tapas with an Australian woman. We were talking American politics. I was in Portugal, in Lisbon, talking to two French girls about American politics, and they would just ask me questions. Just all types of dialogue I would have with people, and we would always be eating a meal as a part of it. So I figured, why not bring that concept here, whether it be they come to my house, so it feels different because I'm at home rather than sitting in a podcast studio, or I'm in their home. They graciously allow me to come in their home and set up. I talk to people who are on the political right, who are center. I've talked to people who are on the left. Some people, I don't even fully know what their political affiliation are. One of my favorite conversations is actually with a Democrat strategist out in DC. And I only knew her because we were on the same show together, but she was nice. So I stayed in contact with her. And when I asked if she wanted to be part of it, she said, sure. And what was really profound about that was, one, I didn't know how it was going to go because it's our first time meeting a person. So it's always a little bit, trying to get to know each other. But the first 10 minutes of our conversations wasn't about politics. It was about the food that we were eating. It was about traveling, because I found that, while I was setting up, that she likes to travel. So you start to see her as a person, right? And I think sometimes our personhood gets overshadowed by our politics. Like, we no longer become human beings that have interests, that have a family, that care about our country, that have jobs. We're just trying to do the best that we can.
Right.
And we just become this idea, and it may be even someone else's idea. So I just wanted to have something where we have a genuine conversation. It can be deep. We can laugh. It's just like if someone came over your house and we were just talking.
Right. So have you ever thought about getting a new grill, but you really wish you could just try it first for, maybe a few weeks and then decide if you really want it? I've got one for you. And this will be the last grill you ever buy. It's made by Solaire. And this is the Solaire infrared gas grill. So on a day when you want to grill and you think, I don't want to spend all this time prepping, you don't need to, because the Solaire infrared gas grill heats up to 1,000 degrees in 3 minutes. I'm not kidding. That even happens in the dead of winter. I know because I've done it. And that heat locks in juices and flavor, and it grills your food faster. This will be the last grill you ever buy. We do vegetables, chicken, steaks, burgers, everything that's grillable you can do right there. So here's what you want to do. Go to besthotgrill.com. You'll get a free guide on how to choose the right infrared grill, whether you're in an apartment and you want one for that balcony, or if you've got a backyard entertainment area. besthotgrill.com, Solaire infrared gas grill, besthotgrill.com. You can try it before you buy it. You will want to grill every single day, and you'll be able to. besthotgrill.com. I wonder, you said earlier in the conversation that you were questioning things, particularly during the pandemic and George Floyd, and those two events coincided and exploded probably because of one another. They were both just massive markers on the historic scale. And you were asking questions. Here we are, we're in 2024 as you and I are sitting here. So about 4 years later, 3.5 years later. Where do you think the Black Lives Matter movement is?
Last I checked, somewhere in California in $1 million house. So,
do you think the movement as a whole is just those people who, were spending a lot of money, or do you think there's still energy behind it, or now has all that energy shifted into, free Palestine?
Definitely part of the free Palestine thing, but I see it like this. And this is kind of how I often see people who follow kind of left-wing movements. They're the people who have good intentions, right? They see this movement on the surface. It sounds good, right? You want to help support Black people. But then you have the people who are deep entrenched in the movement, and this is just a movement to them, one of many movements, because it's not about the movement, it's about the end goal, the objective. And what's the objective for them? Often the objective is communism. That's the long-term goal, but they do all these things leading up. So that's why they can abandon one thing, Black Lives Matter, okay, we're done with that. Let's move to the next thing, and they'll move to the next thing. Palestine
it was like
over,
before Black Lives Matter. Wasn't it the Wall Street stuff? It was, So there was the capitalism angle, then there was the racial angle. Now we've got this anti-Semitic angle that is shocking to me. I'm not surprised about the roots of it being primarily in academia, Adam.
Right.
I'm not. That doesn't. But the shocking part is how university presidents are giving in, that these groups are negotiating with campus administrators. It seems as though the inmates are running the asylum, and how deep this runs and how out there anti-Semitic some of these people are.
So what I think this is, I'm going to make up a word because I don't think it's a word, the customerification of college. Where the college students are no longer students, they're customers, right? So that's why they bend over backwards to cater to them, and they give in to what their demands. The fact that they have demands to even be considered tells you how much of a customer that they feel that they are. They pay $80,000 to be here, so give us what we want. We need more of this, we need more of that, give it to us. It is why there is so much entitlement coming from Gen Z. Part of the reason is, one, they were raised entitled by many of their parents, and two, the institutions also coddle them as well, and making them even more entitled. And the days of, all right, you have an entitled kid, he is the real world, and man, the real world's going to show him, those days are kind of diminishing. there are employers. I wrote an article for the New York Post talking about employers who say all these Gen Zs are coming through and they're all entitled. They all think they should get a raise in a year. They all think, just because they exist, they all want to create their own schedule. They want to do what they want to do, and they're absolutely miserable in the workplace. I mean, it is a generation of entitlement, but the asterisk is who raised them? Who raised them to be this way?
Yeah.
And, as a parent of a Gen Z child, one, my son is not like this whatsoever, not even close. But I raised him to not be this way. I was very purposeful about him understanding that you're not going to get everything that you want.
You're not the center of the universe.
You're not the center of the universe. Purposefully doing things. Like, I'll say this. When he was very young, I can't remember how old he was, maybe 2 or 3. He would play like these little games. And when he would play the game and he'd lose, he'd get really upset. But like, so much so upset that to me, it was a problem. And so what I started doing was introducing points of disappointment for him. So he would ask me for a cookie and I would say no. Now, there was no reason why I couldn't give him a cookie, but I told him no. And at first, he pouted a little bit. And then he'd ask for it the next time. And I'd say no, and he'd handle it better. And over maybe a month, that no just became okay. And he'd move on. And then what I would start doing is saying no. He'd be like, okay. And then a little bit later, I was like, you can have the cookie because of how you handled that. So I think we have to teach our kids. You can't wait.
It's training. Yeah. I mean, it really is training. And I think that people feel like they want to be their kids' best friends. They hate seeing their kids hurt. It's hard work to raise a human. I mean, they're not just kids you're raising. They are burgeoning adults. They are developing humans. And when you look at it that way, you have to ask yourself, how do I want this kid to be when he's 18, 24, 30, or she? And what do I want that to look like? I better start molding that now. But you know what that is? That's hard work. And I think a lot of people just take the path of least resistance.
Yeah. I mean, the path of least resistance leads you down a road of hell.
Yes, it does.
You have these parents who are like, my 13-year-old's out of control. Well, you don't start trying to discipline them at 13. You start at 3.
Yeah.
Right. You have to start early because everything about being a human is habitual. Like, it's the habit of understanding that you can't get this. It's a habit of listening to an authority figure.
How did you learn all this, Adam? Because not everyone has this. Like you said, there are a lot of parents who can't or won't do this. Is this the way you were raised?
Sort of. My mother was very strong. Sometimes a little bit too much. But I think for me, from the perspective of being a father, I didn't have my father in my life. So for me, it was, one, I don't want to be my father, which meant it's a very low bar, just be involved in my son's life. Mm-hmm. But 2, I just thought I want to be the father that I thought I wanted when I was a kid. Okay. And so, even down to something like spanking, I was spanked occasionally when I was a kid. And I started doing that with him, like a little pop.
Yeah.
But I never liked it.
Yeah.
And as he got a little bit older, I saw like my son's like me. And I never liked it. I always felt like, just talk to me. And so I just stopped. I can't even remember how old he was, but I just stopped popping him and I just started talking to him.
Yeah.
And never did it again. And never told him I'm not going to spank you. Never announced it, but just said, every time he does something, I'm going to talk to him. I'm going to talk to him ad nauseum about this. And I'm going to show that I'm disappointed. And being disappointed made my son cry. Yeah. Like, that's how much respect my son has for me. But all of this stuff is like earned, right? And I see, a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but I don't think you earn a child's respect by putting your hands up. Yeah. That's just me.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. I do. I talk a lot about free speech on this podcast. I'm not just a free speech absolutist. It's at the heart of our democracy and everything that we hold dear in this country, the cornerstone that supports every freedom that we cherish, but we're living in a digital age, let's be honest. So discussions about our wealth, our rights, our future, those are being silenced, sometimes overshadowed in mainstream narratives. And that leaves a lot of people feeling like they don't have a voice in conversations that are absolutely essential to our financial independence and security. So this is where wealth protection research steps in. They are armed with a mission that's never been more critical. Wealth Protection Research. They're not a financial advisory firm. They are defenders of free speech, committed to giving a voice to the silenced. Wealth Protection Research tirelessly seeks out financial experts. These are the voices that challenge prevailing narratives, especially as we're looking at the uncertainties of the 2024 election. Wealth Protection Research has created a 2024 Election Wealth Protection Report. This is a free report highlighting the 3 best ideas for protecting and growing your money heading into the 2024 election. It contains ideas the mainstream media often will not even go near, and listeners can get it completely free. Just text the word ideas, IDEAS, to 76626. If you believe in free speech and its sanctity and the importance of your financial freedom, act now. Text ideas, IDEAS, to 76626 to get your free copy of this 2024 Election Protection Report. It is time to widen the scope of what we're told, to hear the ideas the establishment doesn't think you can handle, but we know you can, and take control of our financial destinies. Text ideas, IDEAS, to 76626 to claim your free copy now. At this point, we have our 2 candidates. To me, it's a binary choice with whatever respect due to RFK Jr. He will not win. So right. A vote for him is a wasted vote. Just like when I participated in one of my first votes, Ross Perot was in there. And out of principle, I wanted to vote for Ross Perot. It was stupid. And those of us that voted for Ross Perot paid the price. George H.W. Bush did not get reelected. So I think this is a binary choice, and we're seeing very stark divisions between these 2 choices. I'm going to be participating in an event with Byron Donalds and Wesley Hunt, 2 Black congressmen who are talking about why they think Black men will make the difference in this election. What do you think of that notion?
Anytime it comes to Black Americans in the Republican Party, I don't care if it's polls, I don't care if it's a trend, I don't care if it's viral videos. The real result is, did they vote? That's it. And I reserve myself from saying, yes, there's going to be. Do I think that there might be a change? Sure. How much? I don't know. But I don't think it's going to be anything incredibly sharp. The fact of the matter is a lot of people don't vote. And a lot of people do not like either candidates. Mm-hmm. Voter apathy is a real thing amongst everyone, no matter what their skin color is. So I don't know if Black men specifically are going to be the difference maker. I mean, theoretically, we are 6% of the population, 6-7% of the population. And obviously not all of us are going to go out there and vote. So, I mean, it's a very, very small demographic of people. And primarily we live in very specific areas within urban areas, or I would say in urban areas and in the surrounding urban areas. So I don't know how much difference that's going to make when it comes to counting each state's vote. I mean, one vote is one more than what they had before. But I just don't know if there's going to be this wave, if there's going to be this awakening of some sort that's going to be so impactful. I mean, the Democrats freak out when there's a 2% change. Yeah. They literally think they own the Black vote. Yeah. So they freak out because of that. But do I think that there's going to be something so dramatic that you're going to see article after article about how Black men are the Black faces of white supremacy? I don't know. I don't know if we're going to see that after the election or not.
Last thing for you, I saw you posted, you used to be agnostic.
Yeah.
You weren't really a religious guy, but you've chosen to get baptized. What
Yeah.
do you attribute that major change in your spirit, in your mind to?
How much time we got? I guess the short version is when I write about Black victim and Black victor, part of it is talking about myself, feeling like a victim in life. But becoming a victor means also becoming accountable and kind of taking unfortunate situations and taking an alternate look at it. And when I started looking at those moments of like being homeless, for example, I moved to Nashville and I was supposed to stay with someone and that fell through because they lied to me about their circumstance. And I was going to sleep in my car. And so like I could think about that. I was like, man, I was really down and out at that point. But then I started thinking about it. It was like, but I went through that experience and there are these people who helped me and they didn't have to, and I didn't ask them to help me. You know, what exactly is that? What is this grace that came from this really unfortunate situation? And why did it happen? You know, no hesitation. They put me in a hotel room for, I want to say it was like a month and 2 weeks until I had enough money to get my own place and never asked for a dime. You know, there's something about that. Yes, there are good, generous people out there, but like there's something about that. And then when you add up all these little graces that would happen in the most unfortunate situations, like I would have to go through some suffering, and then it was like a hand would come out to help me just a little bit, not pull me entirely out, but just help me out just a little bit, to show that I am resistant enough to kind of go through these scenarios. And I just started looking at my life. You know, when I said I wanted to write my book, part of that was from a lot of reflection about thinking about what's the purpose of my life? What do I want to do for myself? Why am I here? And that's when I settled on my purpose is to serve, is to help as many people as possible and to leave a positive impact in the world. That's my purpose, no matter what it is. And it makes sense because all of my jobs have been customer service oriented. You know, I like helping people. I always reach out. What can I do for you? And so when I started understanding that, you know, the concept of serving, looking at all these good graces that were happening in my life, even in the most terrible situations, or even terrible situations that could have been far worse, but someone or something stopped it from happening. And I, you know, once, twice, coincidence, but when you start seeing this pattern over and over and over, it seems to be more than that. And I would say that writing the book, I started talking about this more. I try not to talk about it too often, but like it felt like I was supposed to do this. Mm-hmm. You know, I had no expectation. I didn't know what would come from it. Wasn't chasing anything. I just knew that I needed to do this. And sitting down and writing for an hour didn't feel like it was all me, you know, especially as someone who has no background in writing, but I was the gift to communicate. And so I just wrote like how I would talk to somebody. Yeah. And so that's how I started. So I just started looking at all these things. And especially after coming out with the book and meeting all these Christians, especially, who would say they see God in me. And I never had people tell me that. And it's so much that happened in the past 6 years that has convinced me that there's something more. And the more I started looking at Christianity, past the superficial stuff, and started understanding like the concept of a relationship with God. Mm-hmm. You know, to me, that makes so much sense. The concept of suffering God who understands your suffering. He's not just some being that is perfect and never felt harm and can't relate to us. Can relate. You know, so all these things, even learning lessons from suffering, or there's a purpose to the suffering. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, when I talk about growing up without my father and how I suffered through that, I am grateful that I went through that circumstance so I can warn other people to be mindful of this situation, to go towards their children. And my suffering can help many more to stop suffering. just that concept alone makes a lot of sense to me. So I don't know, that's like the shortest way I could put all of this, but yeah, I'm glad to come to Christ and know that I wasn't alone throughout my suffering.
It's a beautiful way to end our conversation today. I always love talking to you. I always love following what you're doing. Again, his podcast is Breaking Bread, and just follow him on X, because it's a good follow and you can learn a lot about all the things that he is doing. Adam, it's great to see you. And I would encourage everyone like him, everything he's done has revolved around courage and doing the right thing. And as we say to end every one of these, be brave and do good, like Adam B. Coleman.